Mais comment ça va, chef? Welcome to the Bon Temps Cooking Show. I'm Chef Harley Fontenot, better known as the Parrain, and today we're making some crawfish etouffee. Now, what you're gonna need is some bell peppers, onions, and garlic, and some little green onions. And then we're gonna need the crawfish, obviously, some tomato paste, butter, and make sure you keep that in your little pocket, some flour, and some seafood stock. Now, I got my own seafood stock, but what you should do is get you some lobster base, the better than bouillon. It's in a little jar at the stove. Now let's get to cutting them vegetables. All right, now that you done cut up all your little vegetables, we about to get over to that pot and start cooking that. But let me show you all a little trick my wife taught me. You take your green onions right there at the end, and you stick that in a cup of water, and you put that on your windowsill, and it's gonna grow. Bet you didn't know that. So first things first, whenever you're at the stove, what you're gonna do is turn that thing up high and let it get hot. And then you're gonna take your little zognon and touch that to the bottom to see if it sizzles. And that's what it's doing right now. And you just use your little bit of regular oil or whatever, but I happen to have some bacon grease. So I'm gonna start my vegetables in bacon grease for more of a depth of flavor. Now, and you dump that in there comme ça. And cook that down. And this is what you're looking for, chef. Whenever it's cooked, you'll know it. It'll smell so good, and all your onions and stuff is clear. And make sure you stir that the whole time too, because as you can notice, I usually keep gramis at the bottom of the pot, but not this time. It's because etouffee is kind of a delicate thing to cook. See, because now that it's cooked down, we're gonna turn our fire low, and we're gonna put some butter in there. But I got the half sticks of butter, so they're in my pocket. But I got them things all over the place this time, chef. So you just take that, and I can't juggle, so I ain't gonna do that. We're gonna pacow all that into the pot. So these are 4 half sticks, but if you get the whole sticks, it's just 2 sticks you're gonna use. And that equals out to a full cup of melted butter. So with your fire on low, because you don't wanna burn your little butter, we're gonna just stir that up and let it mix real good and melt down. And you can go ahead and add your garlic right here. And man, I wish y'all could smell that. Yeah, it almost smells like some garlic bread. Making me hungry. I got the envie for that meal. So once your butter's all melted and stuff, what you're gonna do is turn your little heat back up to like a medium and let it get hot, chef. And once it gets hot, you're gonna add a cup of flour. And what we're gonna do right here is make a blonde roux, which is basically when you cook the flour just enough to where you get the flour taste out of it, and it acts as a thickening agent. But be careful once you do that, because you don't want to let it burn. And a good word of advice when you're cooking Cajun food is to treat it like a woman. You want to be firm but soft. And you just want to keep that moving. You don't want it to stick, none whatsoever. So after you cook that down for about 5-10 minutes and keep stirring it, like I said, make sure it don't burn. What you're gonna do now is add your little water. But make sure you don't add too much at one time. That way, if you want yours real thick, you don't add too much at once, and it's too thin for you to do nothing about it. So that's why I start out with a little bit at a time and add until I get the right consistency I want. See, as you can see now, that's real thick, chef. And almost too thick. So we're gonna add a little bit more water. Stir that. And just keep touching a little bit in there as you go, because you don't want it to be too thick or too thin. I'm gonna show you all the right consistency. That's about what it looks like whenever you have the cream of mushroom style etouffee. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm gonna show you all that later on too. But this right here is the old-fashioned way to make etouffee. So add a little bit more because I like it a little thinner than that. The best way to explain the consistency you want to end up with is almost like a stew. Maybe a little thicker than a stew. Because you want it to stick to the rice. You don't want it to be so thin it falls through and pulls up on the bottom of the plate. But you also don't want it to just pile up on top of the rice. That's not good either. Pardon. So once you get your desired thickness, next thing you're gonna do is add a little bit of tomato paste. So you can use your little spoon and get in there, and that's about 2 tablespoons we're gonna start with. So like I always like to say, you can always add more. That's why you start out with a little bit at a time. Except me with my seasonings, I'm canard. That don't mean you gotta be canard too. But once you put too much of that, say tout fini, that's it. You can't take it out. As you can see right here, my 2 tablespoons of tomato paste was not enough, which is okay. So what we're gonna do is add a little bit more. This time we're gonna add 3 more tablespoons, because them 2 didn't do nothing. And what we're looking for is like an orange color we wanna get from it. Because you don't want your etouffee to be white and you don't want it to be red. You wanna kind of find the middle ground on that. So you just whip that into the pot. And don't be afraid to add a little bit more water, because as you can see, it gets a little bit more thick the more you cook it. So what I'm gonna do, because that's real thick, add just a little bit of water. Thin that out a little bit. And I'm also not quite satisfied with the color. See, I want it to be a little bit darker. So far what we did was added 5 tablespoons of tomato paste. But this part is kind of preference, so start out with a little bit and add it as you go until you get what you want with the water and the tomato paste. So what we're going to do is add a little bit more tomato paste. What that's going to end up being is exactly half of this can. And that's a 12-ounce can. So this is about the color I want. Like I said, it's orange. It's not white, it's not red, it's somewhere in between. So while you got that simmering down, it's time to add your super special secret ingredient, your stock. And that's gonna set it off, I guarantee. And as I said before, that's some homemade shrimp stock I have that my cousin made for me. But trust Parrain when he says this, that if you don't have your own homemade stock, what you need to do is go to the store and get you some better than bouillon lobster base whenever you make this. Because it really makes a big difference in your flavor. For this, seafood gumbo, shrimp stew, couvillon, it all adds to it. So what you're gonna do right here is let your etouffee cook down, and we're gonna let those little flavors marry together, comme ça. And while that's cooking down, I'm gonna tell y'all a little joke shot. So they had this guy, he was riding a motorcycle, and it was real cold, and the zipper on the front of his jacket was broken, and he got tired of that cold air hitting his chest like that. So he decided to pull over, put the jacket on backwards, that way the back of his jacket is protecting his chest. So he takes off down the road, and he comes across a little bend in the road, and he wrecks right in front of Boudreaux's house. So Boudreaux come outside, and he's taking care of him, and he hurry up and calls the ambulance. And 911, they say, well, is the guy okay? Like, is he moving? He said he was until I turned his head back around the right way. Now that you let that simmer down a little while, I'm about to add my seasoning shot. Now, do as I say and not as I do right here, because I put a lot of seasoning, but y'all don't put as much at one time because y'all might make y'all stuff too spicy. But for Parrain, it's never too spicy. So we got our boltones. Now we're gonna put us some onion powder. and some garlic powder. And you can't forget to set that little ass on fire with that cayenne pepper. And I ain't holding back this time. Some people say I use too much seasoning. Well, they ain't got to put that much. Now, you mix all that together and then get you a little spoon and then you taste that. And I tell you what, that's good. Like I always explain, but I'm gonna do it again just in case y'all forgot. If it needs salt, you go with your Cajun seasoning. Never put just straight salt in there. We don't cook like no Yankees around here. So always go with the Cajun seasoning for your salt, your onion and your garlic powder for your flavor, and set the little ass on fire with the cayenne. So what we're gonna do right here is add your crawfish, which I have a pound of crawfish for this, and your green onions. And you mix all that up together and you let it cook for another 5-10 minutes, and then that's it. C'est tout fini. And now this is almost done, but while we're letting it simmer, I'm gonna show y'all the next special secret ingredient. And yeah, there's another one. And I forgot to tell y'all that in the beginning, but here it is now, Sha. Some swamp dust, some crab ball. I'm gonna measure that like Justin Wilson. And you put about a teaspoon in there. And that's really gonna set it off. And after you let that simmer down for about 5-10 minutes, it's time to manger. Join us next time on the Bon Temps Cooking Show. We're having some meatball stew. Until next time, Parrain loves you.